Happy Tuesday, ladies. Glad to see you again. I'm glad you've joined with me today for Ladies Bible Study. I know I've been MIA for a while. It's been a very busy month for me. Sometimes summer is just like that, and we were able to take a trip to Ireland recently. So let's see, let's go backwards and recap a bit what all has happened in the last month that I've been missing. So I turned 60 years old on June 14th, and I was 38,000 feet in the air when that happened. So we had the opportunity to fly over to Ireland and spend some time with our kids and grandkids. So that was a blessing. Spent a couple weeks over there. And then when we came home, we flew straight into fireworks tent. It was already up and running, and so we just jumped right in with helping with that. And then as soon as that was over with, we took a trip to Michigan for my husband and his brothers sing and preach. They're all pastors. And so my brother-in-law, Russell Tharp, who pastors up in Central Lake, Michigan, he hosted his yearly tent meeting. And so we went up for that. And so it's been a busy, busy month. And I'm not going to lie, I'm happy to be getting back on track and back in the rhythm of normal life, whatever that is. One of the things is Bible study, of course. And so if you have been following along, we kind of stopped midway on lesson 8 last time. And this lesson was about speaking with kindness. And it's a great lesson. And I feel like I should have finished it before I took my little hiatus, but we're going to finish today. And so I'm happy that you've joined with me today. If we've never met, my name is Starr, and I'm the pastor's wife here at New Hope Baptist. And this is the Ladies Bible Study. It originally began for the ladies in my church, but many others have just followed along, have hopped on and sent me their email address and asked if can I have the notes. And so I sent out the study notes to those ladies, and we just all studied together. And the unique thing about this Bible study is it's a bit interactive. So once you email me, I'll send you the study notes, and you can study those on your own, and then we all get together and listen in on Bible study. And I would love to hear what the Lord gives you for your answers to the questions. And so that's where the interactive part comes in. But we're going to finish up with lesson 8 today, finishing up talking about speaking with kindness. And the last time we met together, I said that kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. And so we have to be so careful about the words that come out of our mouth. Proverbs 31:26 says, "She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness." Of course, talking about the virtuous woman. And so a couple of quotes that we read about kindness. Kindness makes you the most beautiful person in the world, no matter what you look like. Don't you just love to be around a person that's kind-hearted, kind? They say kind things. Every gesture about them is just kindness. I love to be around somebody like that. Lord, help me not to be an unkind, unloving person. I don't ever want to get that way. I know that maybe my personality, I'm a little bit quieter, and but that, I can still be a kind person. I just need to come out from under my rock once in a while and talk to people and remember to be kind to people. And so we ended down on number 4. If you, like I said, have been following along, we got through we got almost to number 4. And then I got a couple of messages from ladies that said, "Hey, did you know that your Bible study video cut off like in the middle of a sentence?" And I did know that, but after 30 minutes, I thought, well, I'm not going to go back and re-record all of that again, so I'm just going to leave it where it is. But we ended at the end of number 3, and that's okay. We're going to pick it right up with number 4. And so that says, from the passages listed below, what is involved in being a wise reprover? And I think we got through a couple of those verses there, but I'm going to pick it up with Galatians 6:1, which says, "Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted." So our duty here is to restore them to complete fellowship. That's our goal. And it's like setting a broken bone. It can be really painful, setting a broken bone, but it's a means to an end. And the end result should be healing and restoring that relationship. So that's our goal. It's never to hurt them, cause more pain, but it's to restore fellowship. And so we're to do it in the spirit of meekness, not in wrath or anger or in a condescending manner, like we're better than them. Never that way. That never solves anything. Sometimes reproofs, they lose their effect when they're done in anger or finger pointing or, just a spirit of I'm better than you. Don't ever try to solve a conflict that way. We need to do it like the Bible says, in the spirit of meekness, remembering that that could be us at some point in time. It could be us on the other side there. But for the grace of God, there go I. And so if you're tempted to blacklist somebody who's wronged you, be careful to look backward and remember the many times the Lord has forgiven you and restored you back into fellowship with him. Even just the mere fact that he provides forgiveness for our sins, provides salvation for us, should be enough to make us want to be careful with people and be forgiving with people. But think about even after salvation, all the times that we've committed sins. I mean, we're made of flesh, aren't we? Our flesh loves to sin. Think about all the times after salvation that we've committed sins. And he knows our frame. He knows that we're just dust. He does. He created us. But in tender mercy, he always lovingly receives us back every time. We can't ever exhaust God's mercy. We can't. He's so long-suffering. And in his omniscience, he knows that sooner or later, our flesh is going to cause us to sin, and it's going to drive us right back to him for forgiveness, sometimes of the same things over and over and over again. That's our flesh. It has a bent to sinning. And what was it Paul said in Romans chapter 7, verse 19? He says, "For the good that I would, I do not. But the evil which I would not, that I do." And then in verse 24, he says, "O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death?" And sadly, we're going to be in this flesh until the Lord takes us home. But if we walk in the Spirit, it'll help us to be more careful to not walk in the flesh. And so that's the key there, is to remember to walk in the Spirit. Because of what Paul said there, does it give us a license to sin? No, it doesn't. But we need to remember that we're all made of the same flesh, and we need to be careful to remember our own sin and consider our own sin more wicked than the sins of others. And when we get puffed up with pride, it causes us to see the sin of others more clearly than our own, and that's not how it's supposed to be. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 3, it says, "And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, Let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye." So we need to be careful about that we're not, being harsh with someone or judging someone about something that they're doing when we have things in our own life that need to be corrected first. Ephesians 4:15 says, "But speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ." So truth is an excellent thing. We should always speak truth with every man. It's good to speak truth, but it needs to be coupled with love. You can't just blurt something out here. This is the truth. You need to hear this. You need to couple it with love. People need to know you care about them before they're going to respond to you. My father-in-law always used to say, you can say anything you need to say to someone as long as you say it in love. And that's the truth. Say it in the right spirit. But our nature is, if somebody barks at us, we want to give it right back. That's what we want to do back, is bark. If somebody barks, we bark. But 1 Peter 3:9 says, "Not rendering evil for evil, or railing for railing, but contrariwise, knowing that ye are thereunto called, that ye should inherit a blessing." So be careful that you respond in love. Colossians 4:6 says, "Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer every man." So grace is the salt that seasons, or it should anyway, our conversations. It should always be seasoned with grace. And salt, what it does is it makes everything savory, makes it taste better, right? Salt also preserves. But also, interestingly enough, salt can sting if it's applied to a wound, but the sting is only temporary because salt also aids in the healing of a wound. So isn't it amazing? Don't you love reading about all the lessons in nature, lessons in a garden, or in animals, or in foods? There's so many lessons to be learned, but I love this one about salt. But you can never go wrong practicing grace with every person that you speak to. Just practice being gracious and graceful, and having grace in your words and in your conversations. And then in First Samuel 25, verse 23, it says, "And when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground and fell at his feet and said, Upon me, my lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not my lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my lord, whom thou didst send." So you would have to go back and read the whole story here of what happened. But the herdsmen of Nabal and the herdsmen of David, Nabal mistreated David's herdsmen for no reason, just because he was an unkind man. But in this case, wisdom was better than weapons of war, because David, he was ready to send in the army and just, have his way with them. But when Abigail found out about it, she used wisdom. The Bible describes Abigail as a woman of good understanding. And so what she did quickly without delay, because she knew it needed to be acted on immediately. And so she spoke to David all along with respect. She didn't she wasn't condescending to him. She didn't rail on him. That's the kind of man that Nabal was. He was a man that would rail on people and just be angry. And she didn't upbraid him about his course of action, about his heated passion. She didn't upbraid him about all of that. But what she tried to do was to bring him into a better temper, and it's called diffusing a situation. And a lot of people don't know how to do that. A lot of people just enter right into the anger and the passion of the moment. But could I just encourage you to be that one that diffuses the situation, that brings everybody back down to a level head and in a godly way of speaking, conversation? Be that person. Abigail, she was a wise reprover, and we can be that way and not be condescending or puffed up with pride or angry. We can be a wise reprover. Thankfully, David gave an obedient ear to her wise reproof there. And later on, we see David actually thanking God for sending this happy check to his sinful way, because God has a way of doing that. Number 5 says, define flattery. And so this was an easy one. The definition of flattery is false praise. That's flattery. Commendation bestowed for the purpose of gaining favor and influence, or to accomplish some purpose. Direct flattery consists in praising a person himself. Indirect flattery consists in praising a person through his works or his connections. So that's the simple definition of flattery. Number 6 says, why does someone flatter? And we know the Bible talks about flattery, but flattery is excessive praise. And I don't know about you, but when I get around somebody that's constantly flattering me, it is a kind of a red flag for me. And I think I put somewhere in the lesson that you need to be careful about that kind of thing, because someone who's constantly patting you on the back is usually trying to get you to swallow everything they're telling you, and that's the way I feel about flattery. It's a type of manipulation. So underconfident people often use it to feel more powerful and to win approval. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But, we all have met people that they're just constantly flattering people. And I sometimes wonder, why are they doing that? Why are they saying that? They're always that way. And don't misunderstand what flattery is. It truly is a type of manipulation. Passive-aggressive people use it to get their own way. And it's widely used by people who want to get into the good books of others. They want to get on your good side, be on your team or whatever. Or they'll use it to help them achieve their own goals. And I've always felt this way, that when someone's patting you on the back, that's what they're trying to do. So be careful about that. A loving person always speaks the truth, because love rejoices in the truth. And 1 Corinthians 13:6 is where you'll see that. And then John 14:6. Love never speaks in the deceptive dialect of the devil. He's a liar. And he wants believers to think that they're not worth anything. And if you look at John 84, you'll see that don't speak in the deceptive dialect of the devil. A lot of people are falling prey to that right now. Always truth. Always truth. Don't believe the devil. He's a liar. And then a loving person always speaks the truth. I just said, but graciously. And that's in Ephesians 4:29. And man, if you're having difficulty with this, I would encourage you to get into the book of Ephesians, in specifically Ephesians chapter 4, and just remind yourself of what it is that God wants us to do and wants us to be like with our speech, with our interactions with each other. Gracious truth, though, it's not always soothing truth, is it? Sometimes grace comes to us in the form of a reproof or a rebuke. And we see that in 2 Timothy 4:2. Wise people understand this even when they're on the receiving end of the stinging gracious truth. Proverbs 28:23 says, He that rebuketh a man afterwards shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue. Flattery is contrasted with a rebuke because flattery is a form of lying. And it's a particularly insidious form because in the moment that it's spoken, flattery sounds a lot like encouragement, doesn't it? Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the two, so you have to be so very careful. But there's a heaven and a hell difference between flattery and encouragement. There really is. You just have to have the discernment to know which one is happening here. Encouragement, it's truth that's spoken from a loving motive, and it's usually to increase your faith or your hope. And so that's encouragement. Flattery is nothing more than a lie that masquerades as encouragement. And it's from a selfish motive to manipulate the hearer in order to achieve the flatterer's purpose, which is usually covert. Love never flatters others, and wisdom never desires to be flattered. I'm going to write that in the back of my Bible. I ran across that saying and I thought, boy, that's the truth. Love never flatters others, and wisdom never desires to be flattered. But sin is neither loving nor wise, which means that we who live with indwelling sin, remember we live in this flesh and we will till the day the Lord takes us home, we're tempted to manipulate other people with flattery, as well as enjoy being flattered. Our flesh likes that. We like to be flattered, but we really need to be on guard against it because this is a foot entangling sin, and once you step into the snare, you're stuck. And so be very, very careful about receiving flattery from people. Here are a couple of quotes I read about flattery. Flattery is like chewing gum. Enjoy it, but don't swallow it. You can't let praise or criticism get to you. It's a weakness to get caught up in either one. Praise or criticism, either one. Don't let them get to you. The punishment for vanity is flattery. And then flattery is praise without foundation. That's a good one. And then this one, I have already settled it for myself. Flattery and criticism go down the same drain, and I am quite free. So don't listen to flattery or criticism. But we're not only tempted to be manipulative flatterers, we're also pathetically vulnerable to being manipulated by flattery. And that's because of our gargantuan pride in our sinful nature. Isn't it gargantuan? Our pride. It just rears its ugly head and causes all kinds of problems in our life. Our sin nature wants to be flattered because it loves to be admired. Our flesh is so strong, the pull of our flesh. Sometimes it doesn't even matter if we know the flattery is not sincere. It doesn't matter to us. We just like to hear it. As long as it enhances our image in our own eyes or gives us a buzz, it doesn't matter if we think they don't mean it. We just like to hear it. We're so rotten, aren't we? This is, in fact, is the snare of most sexual sin, because the real seductive power in much sexual sin is high-octane pride mixing with the sex drive. That's what happens there. And it fuels this intoxicating experience of being desired, even if it's just a fantasy. And so flattery is what the adulteress did in Proverbs chapter 7. That's what she used to snare the young man and lead him away, as the Bible describes, an ox goeth to the slaughter. And that's in Proverbs chapter 7, verses 21 and 22. And so the adulteress seduced him, but the man was drawn away and enticed by his own lust. And we see that in James 1:14. And so this is the way flattery works on us. It seduces us, but only because our pride finds it enticing. Like I said, we like to hear it. It gives us a buzz, makes us feel good about ourselves, even when we know it's not sincere. Isn't that crazy how our flesh likes to work that way? And if we take the bait, it wreaks destruction in our life. It really does. And that's just one reason why we need to crucify our flesh daily. And that would include our sinful pride. Number 7 says, why is flattery wrong according to these verses? And the first one was Proverbs 12:2. And that verse says, a good man obtaineth favor of the Lord, but a man of wicked devices will he condemn. So our desire ought to be the favor of the Lord, not what others say about us, not the favor, not the praise of men. Let the praise of men fall on deaf ears, and then learn to deflect praise. That's what we taught our children when they were growing up. If someone came to them and started puffing them up about all kinds of things, oh, you played the piano so well, or oh, you sang that song so beautifully, or oh, this, oh, that. We taught them to say, praise the Lord, and remember where that talent came from. It didn't come from you. We can't do anything of ourselves. All that we are and all that we do is because of the Lord and His blessing in our life. So we taught them to deflect that praise so they don't get a big head. But us adults need that as well. Proverbs 12 verses 17 through 19 says, he that speaketh truth showeth forth righteousness, but a false witness deceit. There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health. The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. And so here we see flattery is insincere and deceitful, and we're commanded to speak truth. And so just be careful not to let your pendulum swing too far the other direction. You still have to be gracious with people and kind. Don't become that person that's so brutally honest that you walk around just, here's the flat truth. You need to hear it. Just remember to be gracious with people. I'll never forget one time when we purchased our first house. Our kids were all quite young, and our daughter had childhood cancer, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation gave us a grant, or whatever you call it, and we used that to be able to go to Disney World, and we got her a Cocker Spaniel puppy. These were just some things that she wanted to have, and so because we didn't use all of the money on the Disney World trip, we were able to use that however, our family needed it. And so we were able to take some of what was left over and put a down payment on a house. And so that house was very special to our Hannah. And she had her own room, and we got her a cute little white and brass day bed, and just had fun fixing up a room for her, But it was a special house to us, It was the first house we ever owned. And we were excited about it. It was just this little Cape Cod 2-story house. It wasn't very big at all, just this tiny little house, but it had a big backyard where the kids could play. And we got a dog. And so I'm trying to remember where. Now I'm drawing a blank because I feel like we had a Cocker Spaniel and a Springer Spaniel at the same time, but now I can't remember. Anyway, I know there was a dog. But this was just this sweet little house. It had a detached garage, and the kids loved it. And I remember thinking this house needs a paint job. It was kind of a fixer-upper. And so my husband tasked me with picking out the paint that I wanted this house to be painted, the color that I wanted this house to be painted. And so back in the 90s, which is when we purchased this house, all the rage was a house that was tan with hunter green shutters, and little fence with flowers and shrubbery and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what I wanted. And so he sent me to the store, and I came back with several gallons of tan paint. And we got about halfway through the painting of the house, and a couple showed up to check on our progress. And I said to the woman, what do you think? I guess I was thinking that she would say what I wanted her to say. I said, how do you like it? And she just flatly said, I don't. It looks like it's peach. It looks peach. And it was like a dagger, And I was devastated that our little house didn't turn out to be the trendy tan that all the nice homes were painted in, And I suppose I didn't want her to lie to me, but that kind of stung, And so be careful not to let your pendulum swing so far the other way that, your truth kind of stinks. Proverbs chapter 26 verse 28 says, a lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. So a flattering lie secretly works ruin, and sometimes it's hard to pick up on it. You have to be very careful and use discretion always. And you could easily be led to believe that a certain person is your biggest cheerleader because all they do is flatter you. But a wise man will be more afraid of a flatterer that kisses and kills than of a slanderer that proclaims war. And so be very careful. Like I said, use discretion always when someone is coming to you with kind words. They sound like kind words. Like I said, they sound like encouragement. So be careful. Proverbs 29 verse 5 says, a man that flattereth his neighbor spreadeth a net for his feet. And we already mentioned this verse. But some of us mistakenly think that we're flattering our neighbor when we applaud them for their good. But the Bible says we're spreading a net for their feet. And it has an ill effect on people when we flatter them. It puffs them up with pride. Which is the net that entangles them. So there's a reason to never flatter someone, but speak truth always. Don't flatter. Don't say things that aren't true. He that flatters others with the expectation that they'll return the flattery. Don't we do that sometimes? Oh my, that's a beautiful dress. Oh, yours too. You look so pretty. We say things with, okay, now it's your turn. Now you say it back to me that I look beautiful today. We're so ridiculous sometimes in our thinking. And it makes us look absolutely ridiculous and odious, hateful or detestable to those that he flatters. Instead of empty, vain flattery, how about just encouraging someone towards right, encouraging someone towards serving the Lord, or towards reading their Bible more, or towards witnessing, just doing right. Encourage people that way. You don't have to say empty, vain words. Encourage them in things that are right. Our words can really serve people so much better if we just stop and think before we say them. And number 8 says, why does someone nag? So this is where the lesson might get a bit ouchy. And I was going to kind of tip my hand a little bit at the beginning of the lesson, but I thought, no, I'll wait till we get down there. Number 8, why does someone nag? Meet the marriage killer. It's more common than adultery and potentially just as toxic. What is it? It's nagging. Nagging. The dictionary defines nagging as continually fault-finding, complaining, or petulant, which means childishly sulky or bad-tempered. That's what petulant means. And referring to a woman as a nag or a spouse as a nagging wife is a common stereotype that goes back decades. While men do their fair share of nagging, it's typically the woman, I'm sorry ladies, who gets attributed with the moniker. It's usually the woman that gets attributed with the moniker of being a nag. After all, women do use an average of 20,000 words a day compared to the mere 7,000 that men utter. And all those words have to be directed at someone, right? Sadly, sometimes it's the spouse. It's our husband. Nagging, the interaction in which one person repeatedly makes a request, and the other person repeatedly ignores it, and both become increasingly annoyed with the other. It's an issue that every couple grapples with at some point in their marriage. And while the word itself can provoke chuckles and eye rolls, the dynamic can potentially be as dangerous to your marriage as adultery or bad finances or something like that. Experts say that it's exactly the type of toxic communication that can eventually sink a relationship, and that's so true. Why do we nag? Why do you suppose we feel the need to nag our husbands? Why do we do that? We have a perception that what we want is not going to get done. That's why we do it. We feel like we need to keep telling them because they're not going to do it, and we want this done. So we feel the need to keep asking in order to get it done. It's a vicious cycle, actually. The naggy tires of the badgering and starts to withhold, which makes the nagger nag more. It's a vicious circle. It's terrible. It's like being on a hamster wheel. Personality contributes to the dynamic because someone such as an extremely organized, obsessive, or anxious OCD person may not be able to refrain from whipping out their daily planner and giving reminders to others, especially if their spouse is a laid-back, personality and often does things maybe at the last minute, or they like to fly by the seat of their pants. Maybe you're married to someone like that, and maybe you're the one that whips out your planner every morning. Other people are just naturally resistant to reminders. They don't like it. It drives them nuts. They don't like to be reminded constantly about something that needs to be done. Some people might call that person lazy, but being constantly reminded about something, it can bring out, or I'm sorry, a person who's like that, someone who's resistant to reminders or a little bit lazy, that can bring out the nagger in anyone, because you feel like they're never going to do this thing that I've asked them to do. But you know, the interesting thing about this is opposites attract. Isn't it crazy? So here you have this person that's OCD, a super planner, always organized, everything, a place for everything and everything in its place, you know. And then this other person is like, oh, you know, I'll do it when I get around to it, or I don't care if I put the toothpaste away when I'm done with it. It's just, it's funny how opposite personalities attract each other that way. And you should be able to balance each other out. And the thing I always encourage young brides about is choose your battles, first of all. And second of all, be careful not to make a mountain out of a molehill. Not everything is worth making a mountain out of. It's truly not. And so this isn't all on women, because what it is, it's a communication breakdown. And men do the same thing. Men tend to nag about things sometimes, because they don't always give a clear answer. So sometimes, you know, it's the man that's, you know, causing a little bit of the difficulty, because he's not giving you, you know, okay, I'm going to do this thing that you've asked me to do. I'm going to do it on Monday morning at 10 o'clock after I've had my coffee and my baba time, and I, you know, made my phone call or whatever. I promise I'm going to do this thing that you've that's what women are looking for. You know, women are so many times so detail oriented that it drives a man stark raving nuts. You know, he just wants you to tell him that it needs to be done and he'll do it. He doesn't want to have to report to you and punch a time clock about doing this thing that you need done. They don't like that. And so be careful about that. But since a woman will tend to nag about things, a husband might start to tune her out because he's getting annoyed by it. Nagging can make him feel like a little boy that's being scolded by his mother. I asked you to do this. You said you were going to do it and you still haven't done it. That's nagging, ladies. I hate to tell you that. But they didn't marry their mother. They married a wife. And so you're not his mother. So be very careful about that. To not treat him like a child. Many times he doesn't respond because he simply doesn't know the answer yet. Or he knows the answer is going to disappoint you. So he will refrain from saying anything to you. Maybe if it's something that he can't get to for the next few weeks because he has a busy schedule, he knows if he tells you that, it's going to set you off. So he refrains from saying anything to you about it. And he'll start to withdraw. And that really is communication breakdown at its worst. And so don't keep your husband spinning on a hamster wheel trying to find the right answer to appease you. He doesn't know what to say, you know, so he's just on this hamster wheel waiting for the right time. It puts them, and forgive the analogy, but it puts them in a darned if you do and darned if you don't kind of situation, right? And it can sink your ship really quickly. And so the good news is you can learn to stop nagging if you just learn to change your approach about it. And so I read about an elderly couple, and I thought it was so comical, and some of these things I've done actually. And so this couple, early in their marriage, the missus repeatedly reminded her husband about household tasks and became more demanding when he ignored her. If I was asking him to take care of something that mattered to me and he was blowing me off, it made me feel like I didn't matter in the situation. And I get that, I do. Like I said, it's a communication breakdown. I'm sure it wasn't a case of that she didn't matter to him. That wasn't what it was, but that's how she was interpreting it. And sometimes our perception is our reality, you know, and he needed to do something to correct that. But the mister says that the nagging made his muscles tense and he would become silent and his eyes would glaze over in that 1,000-yard stare. And her requests conveyed some sort of urgency that I didn't think was needed. That's what he says. And if I said I was going to do it, I would definitely do it. I didn't need her reminding me every day or several times a day. I didn't need that. And the missus decided to soften her approach. And so she asked herself, how can I speak in a way that's not threatening or offensive to him? Lord, show me what can I do to change my approach to this? And so she began writing requests on post-it notes. And she'd add a little smiley face or little hearts on the post-it note. That's a good way to soften it. Yep. And so the mister says, initially he was peeved about the sandwich note. Have you ever done that? Have you ever stuck a note in your husband's sandwich? I have. It's quite comical. Usually mine was a love note, it wasn't like, don't forget you got to fix the leaky faucet when you get home. I never did that. It was always a love note. But he says initially he was peeved about the sandwich note, but did show up at Home Depot that evening smiling. So the missus sometimes writes notes to him from the appliances that need to be fixed. Quote, I really need your help, a recent plea began. I'm really backed up and in a lot of discomfort. And it was signed, your faithful bathtub drain. As long as I'm not putting pressure on him, he seems to respond better, the missus said. The mister agreed. The notes distract me from the face-to-face interaction, he says. There's no annoying tone of voice or body posture. It's all out of the equation. So isn't it funny how men and women respond and react to one another? So there's just some little tips for you, ladies. Instead of verbally nagging your husband about stuff, just leaving little love notes, softly reminding, and it doesn't have to be like a whole stack of post-it notes, one on top of the other. That's just nagging on paper. Just soften your approach a bit. Nagging, it can kill a marriage. I promise you it can. Number 9 says, describe the effects of nagging based on these verses. I know we're going a little bit longer, but I'm going to go ahead and push through and finish this lesson. Proverbs 19:13 says, a foolish son is the calamity of his father, and the contentions of a wife are a continual dropping. So a cross peevish, meaning silly or childish, a peevish wife is actually a vexation. It's like having a house that's in such disrepair that the roof leaks and it rains in, and you can never be dry inside. It's like the maddening dripping of a faucet in the middle of the night. You can hear it dripping. And have you ever visited maybe a historical site where there's mountains and maybe running water, like waterfall or a stream or something like that, where water continually runs and drips? And have you noticed how over the years that water that has dripped in the same pattern for 100 years or better, it has literally eroded the rock where the water falls. It has worn away rock. And a woman's nagging words can be that way to her husband and her marriage, and it can literally erode a marriage. Eventually the man will just get so sick of it that he'll back away and say, I'm done. I can't take this anymore. I can't listen to this anymore. All she does is nag me about stuff. She never sees the positive. It's always the negative about me that she sees. She just nags me about everything. And a man can only take so much of that, ladies. And vice versa. I know it's the same with the women, but like I said in the beginning, it's typically the woman that's the nagger. Proverbs 21 verse 19 says, it's better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and an angry woman. So unbridled passions, they spoil the comforts of all relationships. So keep it in check. Walk in the spirit, not in the flesh. Proverbs 25:24 says, it's better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman and in a wide house. And it's always a pity when I see two people that are unequally yoked, but many times even Christians fall into this trap of nagging. It's just the plain truth. Christians are just as guilty of this as lost people are. And my humble advice to you, if this is your track record, is go to your husband or the other person that you've been nagging to death and just confess it. And let the Lord deal with you and get it right with him and get it right with the person that you've been nagging to death. Take it to the Lord. Let him help you with it. Confess it as a sin of your mouth. Honestly, that's that tongue, that unbridled tongue. Thankfully, we serve a loving, long-suffering God, and he's always willing to forgive us and let us start again with a clean slate. Always, always, always. That's the case with him. When we come to him with something that he's dealt with us about and we get it right, he always takes us back. He always loves us and forgives us and extends mercy to us. Don't be afraid to bring it to him. Let him help you with it. Don't be your own worst enemy. Don't be that way. Cultivate a happy, praising, contented spirit always, no matter what's happening. Remember, some things are just not worth building a mountain out of. And when you respond that way to your husband and in your marriage, you'll not only be a delight to the Lord, but you'll be a delight to everybody that's around you, honestly. And your husband, he'll notice a difference like that. And if I was a betting woman, which I'm not, but if I was a betting woman, I would bet he would start looking for things to do for you because you've quit nagging him about things. He'd be more prone to do things for you without the nagging. He would. I promise you, that's the way it works. So good lesson. I'm sorry the end of it was so ouchy. I learned a lot from it too. There have been times even in 42 years of marriage that I've opened my mouth and said things and immediately thought, Starr, what did you just do? Why did you do that? Why did you say that? Even after 42 years. It's way less than it used to be when we were first married, but there still are times, and I'm constantly learning along with you as I read through these scriptures and study these Bible lessons. I'm learning right along with you and trying to sharpen myself in the Word, just like you are. So that's all the time we have for today. It's a good lesson about speaking with kindness, and I hope you'll join with me next week as we start on lesson 9, and I'll be sending those study notes out today yet. And so if you're new and you want me to send you the study notes for lesson 9, just send me an email. My email will be down in the description box. And if we've not met, please pop on and introduce yourself and tell me how you found the Bible study. So hope you have a wonderful week, a wonderful rest of your day, and look for somebody to be kind to today. Look for somebody to do something good for today, and look for somebody to give the gospel to. I love you all, and I'll see you next week.